Okay, so now that we have finished the book of Abraham, we return to Genesis. Genesis chapter 13. Abraham returns from Egypt. He and Lot part. The Lord will make Abram's seed as the dust of the earth in number. Abram settles in Hebron. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. Okay, now first of all, he said, went up into the south. This doesn't mean he went south of Egypt. It means he went into the southern areas of Canaan. So just want to point that out. And also note that Lot is still with him. And all that he had, he's still moving as a great company. He's not by himself. Keep that in mind. Verse 3. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. So he's returning back to where he used to stay, where he stayed before. And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents, and the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle, and the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land. So we have two great families here, Abraham and Lot. Now Lot's been following Abraham. Lot is a righteous man. He believed Abraham. He followed him. But he had his own family. He had his own possessions. And when they come out of Egypt, the Pharaoh gave Abram some gifts. And when they get up to Bethel, they can't stay together because there's just too many animals. And it says the herdsmen of Abram, the herdsmen of Lot, there was strife, and they were trying to graze their cattle on the same land, and they started fighting over it. It most likely, when it says it came to strife, maybe some fists were flying. I doubt anybody was killed, but you got into a tussle over it, and likely not even just over the land itself, but over the water, because that would have been very important back then. So here we go, verse 8. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. So Abram here is trying to make peace. He's saying, look, there's just not enough room here. But we'll give you first pick. We need to separate our possessions here. You need to take your animals somewhere, and I'll go somewhere else. So that neither one is staying at Bethel. Bethel's kind of becomes the border between Lot and Abram. But he tells Lot, you can have first pick. You pick what you want, and I'll go the other way. So we're all good. Verse 10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Okay, so I like in the scriptures here, we can tell that this specific record was not necessarily the original record, because it makes allusions to future events. And so that's something that was most likely added by Moses. He had the original record. He was kind of abridging and editing and making a new copy, in a sense. And so he's saying, look, and he's mentioning this. He chose Jordan. Why did he choose Jordan? Because before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, the plain of Jordan was a very fertile land. And I like that allusion to it. It kind of shows you Moses' editorial hand in the record. So back verse 12. And Abram dwelled in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord. And when it says he pitched his tent toward Sodom, that means he had a correspondence with Sodom. Right now, he doesn't live in the city, but he became friendly to him. They became friendly. And you'll note, Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, but the cities of the plains are separate from the land of Canaan. And there were actually more than just Sodom and Gomorrah, which we will get into again shortly in a few other chapters. But we have these two areas. On the east is Jordan, where the cities of the plains are, and on the west is the land of Canaan, where all the Canaanites live. Verse 14. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. Now we add at the end of this verse a Joseph Smith translation added to the end. And remember the covenant which I make with thee, for it shall be an everlasting covenant, and thou shalt remember the days of Enoch thy father. Again, referencing back to Enoch and that covenant that God made, the original covenant. So this is not it's new to Abraham, and there are certain aspects of the covenant that are unique to Abraham. But the fact that this covenant is there is not new. It was from the beginning, and it was established first. It was established first with Adam, but there was Enoch did get his covenant that the birthright would always descend through his line, and that's what this is talking about. This is remember Enoch thy father. 15. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. And Abram removed his tent, and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto the Lord. So, there we go. This is just a little history. Abraham and Lot. That's kind of where we get the separation of Abraham and Lot and the origin of the different peoples that are descended from them. And we get one thing I do want to mention here is as the sands of the sea. And I read a talk from, I can't remember who, I think it was Orson Hyde back in the 1850s or 60s, something like that, where he said, look, if you take a handful of sand and you count it, every last grain, even if it's just one handful, that's thousands upon thousands. Now, that's a little bit of an exaggeration probably, but you get the point. Now, if you take the sand of a beach, a whole beach, now you're talking about millions and probably billions. But this says the dust of the earth, not just of a single beach, but if you take all the particles of dust that make up the earth, and you were able to count them, that would be the number of Abraham's seed. And Orson Hyde pointed out that if you only count his mortal posterity, there is no way you're going to reach that number of people. There's only a few billion. I mean, you might get 15, 20 billion, but not nowhere near the number of the dust of the earth. And so this is not just a promise and covenant of mortal posterity, but a promise and covenant of spirit posterity, of eternal posterity as a celestialized, exalted man. Because God does not deal only with mortality. Nothing God does is for mortality only. It is always for salvation. But we'll leave it here.